Hello and welcome to UMD News for this hour, dear viewers and listeners. I am Shimelis Gebremichael. In the headlines, Ethiopian officials admit using a Biafra-like siege to starve Tigray. Risk of new tensions as Ethiopia completes third filling of Nile megadam. And now, we'll move into the news in details. We invite you all to stay with the program. In the meantime, please do not forget to like and share our programs and subscribe to our YouTube channel. This is UMD News with me, Shimelis Gebremichael. First up, Ethiopian officials admit using a Biafra-like siege to starve Tigray. In 2004, Iskender Nega, an Ethiopian journalist, activist, and politician, oversaw the publication of at least 5 columns in his Askwal newspaper that labeled Tigrayans the Jews of Ethiopia and called for Ethiopians to emulate the strategies used by Nazi Germany. According to Satanau News, when the civil war broke out in November 2020, such ideas have been implemented against Tigrayans by the Ethiopian government in concert with its allies in Eritrea and the Amhara region. Comparisons to the Holocaust may seem a bit extreme, but events in Tigray are earlier remnants of the 1967-1970 Nigerian Civil War. In response to the secessionist war waged by Lieutenant Colonel Odugo Ojukonu in the predominantly Igbo-populated territory called Biafra, the Nigerian government purposefully starved the population, leading to the death of up to 1 million children. As evidence of the similarities, in 2021, the state-owned Amhara Media Corporation said Tigray's future is like Biafra, and Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed boasted that the Ethiopian government decides whether aid gets into Tigray or not. Despite a slight improvement in the humanitarian situation since April, these genocidal plans are going in Tigray. Much of the Ethiopian public seems to support these policies or chose to remain silent out of fear of pressure, while the international community has not taken them seriously enough. Policies implemented by the Ethiopian and Eritrean governments that appear designed to induce famine conditions in Tigray have been documented since the beginning of the war. In June, despite the blackout imposed by the Ethiopian authorities, determined reports reached Tigray over rocky footpaths and, in rare occurrence, filmed the horrors of the war. On the 2nd of July, ARTE-TV broadcasted their documentary titled Tigray in the Land of Hunger, which showed the effects of man-made starvation and the devastation of the region's health system. The events discussed by the interviewees and depicted in the 24-minute report include the Aksum massacre, perpetrated by Eritrean soldiers, an 11-year-old boy at the hospital who weighed only 8 kilos, and people simply dying at home because they know that the medical centers are out of supplies and so can't help them. The UN recently posted a celebratory announcement rather than telling the truth that its workers are still prevented from reaching much of the starving population of Tigray. On the 29th of June, the UN claimed on social media that since the 1st of April, the World Food Programme WFP has delivered enough food to Tigray to feed 5.9 million people per month. Risk of new tensions as Ethiopia completes third filling of Nile mega dam. Ethiopia recently announced that it has completed a third filling of its mega dam on the Blue Nile, a new milestone that could raise further tensions with downstream neighbors Egypt and Sudan. The Arab Weekly reported that the development comes a day after Ethiopia said it had launched electricity production from the second turbine at the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, shortly named as GERD, in the northwest of the country. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said from the dam site in images broadcast on state television, "Today, as you see behind me, the third filling is complete. The Nile as a gift of God given to us for Ethiopians to make use of it." The massive $4.2 billion dam, said to be the largest hydroelectric scheme in Africa, has been at the center of a regional dispute ever since Ethiopia broke ground on the project in 2011. There is still no agreement between Ethiopia and its downstream neighbors, Egypt and Sudan, about the GERD's operations, despite talks held under the auspices of the African Union. Cairo and Khartoum view it as a threat because of their dependence on Nile waters. But Ethiopia seems it essential for the electrification and development of Africa's second most populous nation. It was one of Africa's fastest growing economies in recent years, until war broke out in the northern Ethiopia in November 2020 between the federal government forces and the Tigray forces. There was no immediate reaction from Egypt and Sudan about Friday's development, but Egypt, an arid nation which relies on the Nile for about 97% of its irrigation and drinking water, last month protected to the UN Security Council that the third filling was underway. Abiy nevertheless thought to reassure Egypt and Sudan over the impact of the dam. He said on Twitter, "When we set out to build a dam on the Nile, we said from the beginning that we did not want to make the river our own. We hope that just like Ethiopia, the other gifted nations of the Nile, Sudan and Egypt, will get to utilize their share." On Thursday, he had called for negotiations to reach an understanding on the dam, but insisted the third filling was not causing any water shortages downstream. The process of filling the GERD's vast reservoir began in 2020, and it now contains 22 billion cubic meters of water out of a total capacity of 74 billion. During the inaugural ceremony, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said, "Compared to last year, we have reached 600 meters, which is 25 meters higher than the previous filling." Ethiopia first began generating electricity from GERD in February. Currently, the two operational turbines out of the total 13 have a capacity to generate 750 megawatts of electricity. It is ultimately expected to produce more than 5,000 megawatts, more than doubling Ethiopia's current output. Project manager Kefle Huro said Thursday that overall the dam was now more than 83% complete, and that the goal was for it to be finished in the next 2.5 years. The structure is 145 meters, that is 475 feet high, and 1.8 kilometers long, straddling the Nile tributary in the Benishangul Gumuz region of northwestern Ethiopia, not far from the border with Sudan. The project was initiated under the former Prime Minister of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, Shimelis, the Tigrayan leader who ruled Ethiopia for more than 2 decades until his death back in 2012. Well, dear viewers and listeners, with that, we come to the end of the news for today. This has been UMD Media News with me, Shimelis Gebremichael. Thank you for watching and have a good one.